In this video, we're going to review a few different features that fall under the category of sizing and layout improvements. So as you look at these individually, they may not sound like the most exciting new features, but I can assure you that they make a huge impact in your ability to make sure that your dashboards look good on any screen size and your ability to pack more data and make more data dense dashboards in general. So we'll look at these one by one, and then we'll see kind of the effect of them all together as well. So consider this analysis that I have open here. The first thing around the dense visuals. So QuickSight essentially has a snap to grid kind of sizing. So as you've resized your visuals, you notice that there's different kind of snap points there. So up until this point, there had been 12 steps left and right across the grid for any analysis or dashboard you create. And it can be however long as you wanted it to be, but left and right, there were 12 steps to that grid. So the first part of these features is that has been increased to 36 steps now. So essentially you just have a lot more breakpoints to customize how big you want each individual visual to be. So that's just around the density of the grid. Now, on that 12-step grid, the smallest visual that you were able to create before was a 2 by 2 size. So you could fit 6 visuals across the screen, and they were about this big. So they work for most chart types, but say you wanted to make a very small KPI visual, or you wanted to use one of the insight widgets to display some text around maybe some of the data that you're displaying in one of the other visuals. Usually you wanted to reduce the height on those visuals much smaller than what the previous grid would have allowed. So beyond having 36 steps now, you can now make things that are as small as 1 by 1. I think 2 by 2 is probably realistic in terms of how small you'll actually want to make something, but we're letting you go down to all the way to a 1 by 1 size. So one of the new effects of this is you can create things like spark lines. So on this tab here I have called metric board, notice that all of the headers, the y-axis and my x-axis label, all that stuff is hidden. So at a certain point, I'll make this visual a little bit bigger just so we see. Previously the smallest you could make this line chart was probably about that big. So if I wanted to make that a lot smaller, I can certainly make those smaller, but once you get to a certain level of height, it's smart enough that the axes are taking up a little bit too much room and it actually hides the axes for you. So you can create this kind of sparkline effect. So you can get these, really small if you want them to be. In addition, we could even hide that title on there. So that's one kind of nice side benefit of this is creating sparklines. You can also use the insight widgets to add text descriptions and images, logos, hyperlinks. There's lots of ways that you can use those insight widgets besides just putting information like top 3 or forecasts or anomaly detection. They're very useful for those type of things, but say, here I just wanted to put some additional context around what we're showing in that map. So I can use an insight widget for that. And again, it used to be that they could be about that tall was the smallest, but now you can make them much, much smaller. So those are a couple big improvements just in themselves. Now, there's another feature coming with this, which is called fixed responsive dashboards. If you're watching this video before the end of April, you may not see this new button quite yet. It's launching at the end of April, whereas these couple other I've already reviewed are already live. But how it's going to show up is this new button here that says Settings. So essentially, QuickSight has always tried to auto-fit all the visuals to your screen and resize things as best as it could. But notice what happens I'm showing you the old behavior right now. So even if I expand, say, one of my menus here, I'm starting to get scroll bars on some of my insight widgets that I didn't want to have these scroll bars before. When I had designed this on my monitor, it looked good. I didn't have any scroll bars, but now all of a sudden, if someone's on a little bit smaller monitor, they're going to start to see scroll bars pop up. And as I keep scaling this down, so maybe I have a not as good resolution on the laptop that I'm on, or my browser window is just not as big. Some things resize very well, and some things didn't. So, for instance, any text would always remain the exact same size, like in titles and in insights, in legends as well. So notice the legend is actually taking up quite a bit more room than I wanted it to, and my visual doesn't have as much room. Some of my KPI visuals aren't fitting into their box anymore. My image actually completely disappeared. So there were some issues when you were designing on a nice big monitor at your desk, but maybe you share this with some other users who are looking at it on a smaller device, and it doesn't look quite as clean as how when you designed it. So that's what this settings button is going to fix for you. So auto fit is the behavior of how QuickSight has always been to date. What's new is this optimize button, and just the settings button in general is new, but really this is the new part where you can optimize it for a certain pixel width. It doesn't mean that your screen has to be exactly this amount of pixels, nor if you're going to stick this in an iframe inside one of your applications, if you're embedding this, it doesn't have to match exactly what your iframe size is either. Really just want to pick one of these that looks good to you. So, the font sizes are going to be proportionally different for each one of these. If I put it all the way up the highest one, I could get the most crisp displays of data, and I could pack the most amount of data into my bar charts and my line charts and whatnot. But as you can see, a lot of the fonts became a lot smaller. So, there's certainly scenarios where I might use that highest resolution one. I like picking some of these in the middle. This one, 1366, I find works really well. So, you know, I'm happy with everything looks here. All my KPIs are fitting in nicely. I don't have any scroll bars on any of the visuals. And now notice what happens as I resize up and down. So to kind of mimic resizing up, I'm just going to hide this menu. And notice everything proportionally sizes up. And same thing as I go down. So I'm going to make my browser smaller here. Notice everything's still readable. I don't get any scroll bars. Everything's kind of locked in terms of the ratios, pixel by pixel, but it's just scaling down proportionally. So huge improvements in this area, just around how things are going to resize for different screens. You never have to worry about what screen someone's going to be using when they look at your dashboard. Works the same for any visual really. So here I have a table, and this setting is for my whole dashboard. It's not like I'm setting it per sheet. So I still have that my optimized fit on there. And again, as I scale this table down, everything's still going to be readable, and I'm not getting any scroll bars left and right. And if someone was on a small device, they could pinch to zoom on there if they want to see some individual text a little bit bigger. And then just kind of, this is also related to one of the earlier features around just the more high density grid. So just notice if you want to put a lot of small KPIs across there. So with the 12 step grid, you could put 6 KPIs maximum left and right. Now you can put all the way up to probably 18 of them if you made them all a width of size 2. Then you could put 18 of them if you wanted to. Here we have 9 displayed, but you could see I could make these even smaller if I wanted to. So I have the text size on here fixed right now to be a small, but maybe I would go with extra small if I wanted to make something really that small. One other feature that's related to this is you'll notice that the context menu for your visuals has become kind of a floating object. So previously, like your filter button and your maximize button and all of your other menu options that were hidden this ellipsis, it would always reserve space inside of your visual to be able to show those items. And as you scaled that down, that space proportionally was taking up more and more space of the whole visual itself. So by moving that outside of the visual and kind of locking it to the outside, it just gives you a lot more space to be able to display data in that visual itself. So these floating controls were another enhancement that launched in the last about probably 4 weeks or so, but also related to just being able to pack more data into your dashboards here. One final note is that the settings here also apply to things like email reports. So if you had set up email reports, but we had some feedback from customers that the text in the email reports was too small to be readable. So if you set this so that you like how readable the text is as you're designing it, after you publish this and set up an email report, you'll actually see that uh, it's responsive to the sizing that you put there. So if I made that if I set that to the 1920 setting, when I get my email report, the text is going to be a lot smaller. If I set it to a smaller pixel setting, then proportionally all that text is going to be a lot bigger. And then lastly, just as you can see, even as a reader for this dashboard, everything's still sizing up and down really, really nicely for me, even if I'm on a smaller screen. So in summary, those are the 3 new features that have launched for sizing and layout improvements. Hopefully this allows you to create much more uh, predictable and just visually rich and visually appealing displays for all of your end users. So hope you enjoy all the new improvements for sizing and layouts. Thanks.